Hi, everybody. This is Thomas with Sweet Point Setter Tales and my co host, Wade Kistner.
How you doing tonight?
We are, I'm doing good. The woke up this morning and went outside, and there's a nice haze. There's kind of almost reminded me of a frost the way it looked this morning. So, and seeing all the crops starting to turn a little bit. The corn leaves are turning brown. The beans are turning brown a little bit. And starting to see some leaves changing, and I'm getting revved up for hunting season.
Looking
I
like
know that.
fall's coming.
Yeah, fall's coming. The dogs are, I can always tell in the mornings, the dogs are just going nuts. They want to get out. They know it's getting time, getting them out into the grass a little bit, getting them out into the hay field across the road, and they're just wanting to run. So they know it's coming. I know it's coming. My trigger finger's getting a little bit itchy, and I'm ready. I'm ready to start hunting.
Well, I think the dogs probably are too, and yeah, it's kind of interesting. It just the leaves are turning just a little bit at my place. A few of the trees are, and yeah, it's kind of snuck up on me this year. I mean, I don't know where the summer went to, but
We were
seems like
painting your house. Did you get that
well,
done?
no, I have
Oh
not.
my
I know you
gosh.
had to bring that up
I
too,
did.
didn't you?
I know your
Damn,
wife's listening, so
damn.
I
Um,
figured she
I've got I've got the I got the sides that people see done.
okay,
So,
that's good.
so the sides now either my neighbor has to look at or, I look at from the backyard. So, it's not quite as bad. But I will get that done before bird season starts.
I know you could do like what they do at Wrigley Field and just have that ivy growing up on the sides, and then you
Well,
never
yeah,
see the paint. You won't even have to
yeah,
worry about it. Just trim around the windows.
yeah. I was like I said, it's about 4 years past due for me to do this project, and
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to get involved in some other things. But yeah, I'm on it. I'm on it, and yeah, getting up and down the ladder and everything else. But we will get that done. I promise you, we will get that done before the bird season
Well,
starts.
we got about 3 weeks, and we'll be hunting.
No pressure. No
I know we
pressure.
got it. We'll be starting our guiding venture in about 2.5 3 weeks. So
So what are we're going to talk about tonight? We're going to
well,
do a little bit in your area of expertise, right?
a little bit. So oh man, this was a long time ago. I think it was like 2006. I went up to Sac County, about 3 hours from where I live. I had an acquaintance ask me if I could bring the dogs up for a youth hunt. So many of you know that that's kind of what I love to do, and I had a couple dogs in training at the time, and I thought, what's better way to get a dog up there, get him on some birds, and happened to see this guy get out of his truck with this little black Gordon setter. I've never seen one. I saw him on TV. I've seen him in videos and magazines, and
In
introduced and went hunting with him and
in the flesh.
in the flesh. And what a cool dog! And this is when I met John. So every year, Pheasants Forever stuff. John was was part of Pheasants Forever for a while. He has yet started a new adventure with Midway USA as their foundation coordinator. So want to bring John on and have him talk about a little bit what they do, and we'll talk about his dog Jake, the wonder dog we call it. Jake has since aged, but and passed on, but he's got another dog in the house, Cooper, that's just as good as a dog. So, but let's bring John in and welcome
Yeah,
to the
thanks for having
trails.
me, guys. It's a pleasure to be here and talk about all things outdoors. That's for sure.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, for sure. I see you even
yeah,
got some drawings back there behind you of one of the dogs. Looks like maybe a grandchild had.
that actually is Jake the Wonder Dog. My daughter drew that when she was in grade school, and I've been working in this office since 2006 when I met you, either for Pheasants Forever, and then I transitioned to the Midway USA Foundation, and they had some art contest at school or something, and Susie was my official dog trainer for Jake. She went hunting with me. She controlled the dog, or he controlled me, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, she was a wonderful kid to have around working with Jake, and she spent a ton of time, in the backyard with him with a bumper, and just kind of working with him to hold and those kind of things. But eventually, she wrote a couple of articles for Purina that were in the Pheasants Forever Journal, and it's kind of cool to see it go full circle. Here's this little kid, this little girl who was interested in dogs, but she didn't really want to hunt. But she was there all the time hunting with me, but all she cared about was the dog. So I give her full credit for making a wonderful bird dog, and not me, that's for sure.
My nieces are about the same. They're at that 12 to 16 range, and they love the dog. They just don't want to go hunting. So they
Right.
helped me raise my last little setter. They spent a lot of time with my parents, and they had her a lot because I'm on the road all the time. So they brought her up till at least she was old enough to use the doggy door at home. And but yeah, that's when the kids get around and it seems like they act a little better. They're a little more polite. Maybe
Yeah.
they you got to take away the bad habits once in a while, but bad habits are easy to break.
Yeah,
So
dogs make better children. You get a
yeah,
dog around, they're just better kids.
yeah,
So,
I think you're right. I think you're
yeah,
100% right. Well, let's first have you just kind of tell us who you are and what you do. Tell us
sure.
how you started hunting, when you started. You're
Oh
growing up,
man,
and what brought you to what you're doing now.
it's a bumpy road. So I grew up in Northwest Iowa in a little town called Cherokee, and I had unfortunately lost a brother to a gun accident. Um, and I was real little when that all happened. And my father was one of those guys from World War II. So he saw some things that probably weren't too much fun, and then he lost his son. And the odds of me getting involved in hunting and shooting sports was, zero. And lo and behold, a guy moved in next door and had a son about my age, and they owned a farm in southern Iowa. And started kind of chirping in my dad's ear that it'd be good for Johnny to go hunting. And Dad said, "I tell you what, we got a great hunter ed program here in town. If you go through it twice, we'll talk about it. So you need to know how, gun safety." So the guy that happened to be teaching that, his name was Les Lickladder, and Les had an outdoor show. So every Sunday afternoon, it was outdoors with Les, and it was kayaking, canoeing, and reloading shotgun shells, whatever. It was all things outdoors. He knew about my brother, and he knew about my neighbor, and so I just kind of kept working on Dad a little bit here and there, and finally, Dad kind of fell in love with the idea. And he was a strong fisherman my whole life, but he quickly turned to hunting, and he enjoyed the heck out of it, primarily because of the people you're around. The like-minded people, the camaraderie, being outdoors, all those things he was just really into. And so my first hunt was actually in 1974. I was pretty little, and I carried a BB gun for a couple of years. And every pheasant that got up, I shot with that Red Ryder. Don't kid yourself. I'm the one that got that bird. And along comes a dog, and at the time it was a spaniel, a little Springer spaniel, and man, that's when I dove, right into it. And then the neighbor and I, the kid and I, took it upon ourselves to train this dog, and he was also a very very good dog. And everybody in town knew this dog because he was more of a cartoon character than he was an actual hound in the backyard. But everybody fed him. It was just a big deal in our neighborhood, and we named him Les after Les Lickladder. So there was this big joke around town. You named your dog after one of your teachers, and kind of a thing. And kind of grew up around some other dogs, some labs and stuff. And once I got kind of into college, it became very evident to me that hunting was like my life. I bow hunted, I upland hunted, I deer hunted, and but dogs were what I really thrived for. And of course, in college, it's hard to have a dog. I lived in a fraternity at Iowa State, and it was very difficult to have any kind of critter around the house, and so I couldn't wait to get out of there and kind of get into the outdoors on a regular basis and have a hunting companion, a dog. And so I ended up getting my first setter after we had kids because everything I read on setters was they were really really good with children, and they build strong bonds, and all the great things you want to see your kids around. And his name was Jake. He called him the Wonder Dog. So did we. He really set the foundation for where I am today, because that dog taught me so much more about hunting just one-on-one. It drove me to apply at Pheasants Forever. And that wasn't in my wildest dreams. I never dreamt of working for them or understood really exactly what they did. But I had some really amazing experiences. So I thought, I'm going to apply. And a lot of this was in memory of this neighbor kid. He was my roommate in college as well. I mean, we were very close, and he was going to school to be a fishery and wildlife major and ended up getting a park ranger job. The next day, he got killed in a motorcycle accident.
Oh.
So my neighbor, who was also my godparents, we became even closer, really close. When his son passed, we just did everything together, and that's where I hunt to this day. And so he encouraged me to apply with Pheasants Forever as this, basically it was a marketing and promotion specialist in Western Iowa. And I didn't know what it was, but I read the description. I thought I can do all that, So I applied, literally got hired 2 days later, and started working with the chapters primarily in the western part of the state, which included Sac County, Thomas, where you and I met on that hunt. And of course, if I went, the dog was typically with me. I used him at all kinds of outdoor events, primarily because kids would much rather talk to that dog than they would to me. He was much more entertaining and educational. So I found myself talking about the breed a lot to kids and why they did what they did when they were pointing and retrieving and just their basic behavior. And kids were just focused in on that. They loved that, So as I'm kind of trekking through Pheasants Forever over the years, a couple came in and said they wanted to fund a shooting sports program through Pheasants Forever. And it was Larry and Brenda Potterfield of MidwayUSA. And they had started a brand new foundation. It was in 2007. And they were looking for ways to connect hunting and shooting sports and kind of make these kids better citizens. Shooting sports athletes tend to be very respectful. They have great discipline, amazing leadership skills. It's just off the charts. Plus, it's one of the few sports where it doesn't matter if you're the fastest or, you can jump the highest, or if you're short, tall. None of that matters. It doesn't matter if you're a boy or girl. Everybody competes on a level playing field. So the more I hung around with Larry and Brenda, the more infatuated with it I became, and I just loved what the foundation was doing. Now, fast forward a few more years, and I never saw the path from Pheasants Forever going to work for the MidwayUSA Foundation. It just kind of happened without me even trying. It just, life kind of passes you by and around you, and then all at once you're here, kind of a thing. And started working for them as a program manager at the foundation in the northwest part of the country. And all the guys around the nation were giving me grief because it's like, the best hunting in the country arguably is in the northwest. If you love to hunt, it's a good spot to be, right? And the more of the teams I met, the more I realized, hey, a lot of these guys are hunters. I mean, a majority of them are hunters, and they're teaching their kids to hunt. And so we shared that common bond. And now about year and a half later, they asked me if I would be willing to work within the industry and kind of pull them into the fold, because a lot of the manufacturers didn't really know what the foundation was doing or why we were doing it or how it tied to them. So right now I work with a lot of the entire shooting sports industry, and then also donors and partners and agencies that are looking to get involved with the foundation and trying to figure out how they can fit into that mechanism. So the foundation, which is a story all on its own, it works with roughly 2,800 shooting teams nationally, all shooting disciplines: rifles, pistols, shotguns, muzzleloaders, rimfire, air, center fire, all kinds of disciplines. They're in all 50 states. We currently house about $250 million in investments for those 2,800 teams nationally. We've got partners in there as well. So, like the national shooting sports entities, like the Scholastic Shooting Sports Foundation or Civilian Marksmanship Program, or the USAES, Youth Education and Shooting Sports. All these groups that are pulling together organized shooting sports in local communities, they pretty much all have an endowment with us as well, and that helps offset their operations so they can continue to function. Because shooting sports, unlike football, the school typically doesn't want to fund it. So it falls on the burden of the parents in a lot of cases. So the foundation will actually work with those communities to provide fundraising opportunities. They keep a portion of the proceeds, roughly half, they keep local for immediate needs. The other half goes into their endowment account at the foundation. We match it with our monthly match, and then Goldman Sachs manages those investments. So then going forward, once a year, the team can pull a 5% grant out of that endowment account to offset their costs. And they can use it for ammo or travel or training or food or entry fees or targets or basically anything. We've got a couple of limitations. They can't use the funds for individual scholarships because it doesn't benefit the team. They can't use it for political lobbying because it really has nothing to do with shooting sports. And then they can't purchase guns with it because guns don't travel well. They don't go from generation to generation of shooters without more issues. So they've got to come up with their own guns, and we have partners that provide basically guns as loaners to groups that don't have firearms. So we've kind of connected the dots there. But long story short, the foundation is just a wonderful, well thought foundation for youth shooting sports. We're the only one of our kind in the nation. So we really want to make sure that people know we are here and that we're here to help them locally. And in some cases, they still haven't heard of us. So it's kind of amazing, but it happens.
And I was actually looking today on the list of the teams and that you have in your endowment, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see any Cedar Rapids public schools in there, and I don't know if that's because they've gone a different direction, or they don't know about it, or what. So
Some of those are
hopefully,
clubs. Yeah. Some of them are clubs versus in the school. Yeah.
okay.
So,
I know
um,
some of the high schools in Cedar Rapids do have trap teams, but
yeah.
and it
Yeah.
might be that they just haven't clued into what you guys are doing. Maybe I don't know.
Could
So
be. I mean, more than likely in Iowa, most of the teams have heard about us. And Iowa leads the country in shooting sports programs. It just organically has that type of culture. A lot of outdoorsmen here in the Midwest, and every little town wants kids to learn how to shoot and shoot correctly and be safe. And in some schools, it's bigger than the other sports. I think in Minnesota, it overtook hockey like a couple years back. It's the number one athletic sport in Minnesota for participation. So yeah, it says a
that's
lot about
amazing.
it.
Yeah.
And,
Wow.
Yeah.
and I work, with the foundation that I work with. They mainly work with the Scholastic Shooter Program. So a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the kids that I took hunting this fall were all in some sort of shooting sports. So schools from all over the state of Iowa, and these kids are no slouches when it comes to shooting. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
it was. I think one. I just carried a gun to play cleanup in case they were having issues, but I never really had to because, one kid, I think he'd won national championships, and
Mm-hmm.
it was just amazing. And he was like 14, and
Yeah.
he's won everything you can think of as far as youth shooting, and I remember one rooster got up in the sun and it was windy. It was just we were in the brush pile, and the dog was on point, and I said, okay, I'm gonna walk in there and push it towards you. Gave him. I always make sure. Okay, where are you shooting? What are we shooting? Where's everybody at?
Yep.
And with all the kids that I've taken out, those kids are 100% the safest, and they're all safe. I mean, we do lots of safety talks, but they know where that barrel's at. They know where to identify. It's like when you see blue sky, go ahead and take a shot. You're not endangering anybody in the group. You're not endangering the dog. And this bird come up and went straight up. And I thought, there's no way this. I've seen some really good shooters miss shots like that, and
It was a Travis shot.
it was a Travis shot. And this bird went sky high into the wind. I thought, oh no, we've been walking for a while, public land. This is gonna, and he just dusted it, just creamed it. And I kind of turned around like, uh, wow. So
Yeah.
that's just something I notice when taking all these kids out, and even with the college, I work with a couple of local colleges. They bring some of their shooters, and they're all great shooters. I've gone to a practice with them. I mean, they've even worked. I went a couple times. They had like the UNI girls team volleyball team or Wartburg volleyball team down there showing them how to shoot, and it was amazing how these kids could stand there and teach these girls that most 95% of them, I think, had never even held a gun.
Yeah.
And by the time we were done after an hour, they had busted clays. And it was not a nice day out. And they still came, and it was cold, windy, and it's just like you said, they're disciplined, they're polite, all those things were there. And this sport, I know it's getting big, but I know a lot of the little clubs, local club around us, they struggle with money. And
Yeah.
I know they're working
Well,
on doing that, and your foundation is there to help.
they've kind of done some studies out there trying to figure out how many youth shooters are there across the country. And there's roughly, according to the surveys, there's roughly 4.5 million youth shooters. So I call that college age and below because we work with a ton of colleges, guys. So, in Iowa, there's 22 that offer scholarships that are involved in shooting sports. So that's amazing. But when you hear that number, 4.5 million, and you think of the number of kids that are buying a gun or buying ammo, and the amount of Pittman Robertson excise tax that goes back into that system for conservation efforts, hunter ed, open access to land, new ranges around the country, it's staggering. It's like I want to say it was like 1.8 billion that was going through there in excise tax. And Pittman Robertson's been around since 1937. It's no big secret. That thing's been around a long time, and that 11%, it means a lot to the state agencies that are trying to expand their education and their footprint and provide hunting opportunities for us. If they don't have those dollars to work with, there's some of those places that are just gone, that just wouldn't exist. So youth shooting sports is a key component to conservation, to hunting opportunities, to access and ranges. And most people don't connect that dot at all. They just think, well, youth shooting sports is a small division of hunting, and it's not. The surveys we've seen, 70% of the youth involved in shooting sports have hunted or want to hunt. So with the whole R3 movement, where you're trying to recruit and retain and reactivate and get people out into our sport, if we don't keep these kids involved in shooting sports, it's not going to happen. It's just not. Because we don't have the feeder system in place to handle the baby boomers leaving. And that's why we're seeing that decline year over year of 8%, because nobody's been training kids at that level for enough years. I firmly believe when these kids come through in organized shooting sports, they're going to stick with it as a lifelong skill. And they're going to teach their kids and get them involved because they know how cool it is. It's far better than any sport where you're going to get an injury.
Hmm.
Football, you worry about knees, ankles, concussions. And shooting sports, you don't have any of that. It's It's actually safer than recreational jogging, if you can believe that. So,
Well, I'll tell you what, I hurt a knee and an ankle and a hip hunting. so, so I don't count me into that category.
we're gonna have to bubble wrap you,
Yeah,
Thomas.
I know. I should be good by now.
That's
I
why
got everything
that's
fixed
why I
now.
gave up jogging. I
I
just knew
know.
it was unsafe as hell.
Same
So
here.
I just
You
gave it
trip
up.
and fall and no, and you know what? I was going to ask you. That was going to be my next question of how many of those kids had gone hunting because I think I kind of did my own little survey, and a lot of the kids that I had taken this year hadn't, and some of them were college age. They just never got to
Yeah,
hunt, and
it's an opportunity thing. We've done whatever we can to build barriers between hunting and novice hunters or new hunters, new people to the sport. Um, you know, what they're looking for is where do I go? Am I within the laws? Am I following the laws? There is a ton of rules and regulations that if you grow up in the sport, you kind of pick it up as you go. If you're new to hunting, do I need steel shot on this property or can I shoot lead? What are the hours? Where do I buy a license? What gun should I use? There are so many things in their way that to get to the point where you're a normal shooter to hunting, you have to have a mentor. Somebody's got to help you understand what you're doing and how to get involved. And I think, Thomas, you started off the show talking about Sac County and bringing your dogs up there. And I always admired Sac County. I thought that was a great group of guys
mhm,
that understood the connection to the land. And if they didn't pass that on to the next generation, those kids wouldn't understand, the groceries don't come from the refrigerator. Heat comes from the furnace. That's all they know. So by getting them outside and kind of taking your time explaining things, even if it's as simple as how water runs off a field into a river and buffers help filter that water, and that water source is important to people downstream as it is to us. Just those basic conservation minded ethics, that's where kids get it because most parents aren't talking about that anymore. We've made life so simple that you kind of get disconnected. And I know it sounds awful, but it's the truth. So
So John, do you think that like we kind of almost lost a generation in there? I mean,
mhm.
and now we're trying to come up with ways to get that back. But when the bird numbers really declined in Iowa like they did, in the early '80s, and so many people just kind of gave up, the sport. Well, then when they gave up, that opportunity to take that youngster
Yeah,
or that grandson into the field like we were, you
totally.
know, how we were brought around through the sport. That we kind of lost that for a while, and so those
Yeah, the
kids didn't get
landscape
that
changed.
opportunity, as you said, for that mentor, that
Mhm.
family member that took them under their wing and took them out and really got them hooked, on the sport with
Yeah,
that.
I'm a perfect byproduct of that. I mean, I was likely going to be in trouble in school more than I was not. I wasn't involved in sports. Played a little baseball, and that's really about it. And got in trouble a lot. And shooting sports, it saved me. It was something I was really good at. It was something. I mean, I got on the bus with a shotgun. Obviously, it was cased, but I got on the bus, went to school, and put it in my locker. And then after school, we'd go shoot. And the principal might walk by when I'm doing it. He'd say, "Hey, John, what gun you bring?" And he'd want to see my gun, in the middle of the hallway, kids all over. And here we
Oh,
are looking at a
those were
shotgun.
the good old days.
Those were the good old days, brother. They were the good
Yeah,
old
they
days.
were. They really were.
Um,
And I remember the trucks, vehicles parked in the school parking lot. A lot of them had racks in the back, and their shotguns were there. And
oh yeah,
we'd hunt after school for an hour or two on the way home, or hit up.
absolutely.
One of the
So did
guys
I.
had a one of the guys lived on a farm nearby, and we'd stop over there and spend a couple hours trying to hunt quail or whatever. And but
Yeah.
so, and the thing that I found is that when people started here recently in the last few years started talking about how this trap thing was really starting to take off with the public schools, I said, "There's no way." I couldn't believe that their schools would endorse something like that. Are you
Right.
kidding me? Firearms and
Right.
and getting behind kids that are trying to learn how to use shotguns and shoot competitively and that kind of thing,
Yep.
and then the more, but it sounds like it's that trend and it's really taken off, and
Yeah.
that's wonderful. That is just outstanding.
There's
Yeah, and
a
I was encouraged to be in sports. It's either you're going to go out for sports or you're going to go work.
yeah.
And luckily I worked with my family. So, but my parents were, dad brought me up hunting. Even if I was in trouble with mom, I still got to go and be in the outdoors because my dad
Uh,
knew how important it was. They'd rumble a little bit about it, but you're grounded. Well, he's still gonna go. We're still gonna go hunting because he's gonna learn things. And I know our school actually has a hunter safety program in the school,
yeah.
and
So
COVID
did mine.
stopped that,
That's pretty cool.
and they actually use it as a prereq. It's like a PE class,
Really?
Yep.
and they stopped it for COVID.
No
And
kidding.
my sister says, "Well, I don't think my girls need it." I said, "You know what?"
They
And
had that at that one room schoolhouse that you went to.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
I
I
didn't
didn't
have.
know horses had gun racks either, but
I wasn't going to say anything about Missouri.
I was thinking horse and buggy when he said that, and I thought I'm gonna be polite, but
You're
since you
never
poked me
polite.
in the
You're
ribs,
never
I'm gonna
polite.
give it back to you. But my sister, she was kind of, my daughters don't need to have hunter safety. They're not gonna hunt. They're girly girls. And I said, and the one thing I said that maybe kind of made her open her eyes a little bit, I said, what if they're babysitting and little Johnny comes out of his dad's closet and he's got a gun?
Hmm.
Would you rather have her call one of us and us rush over there to try and get this gun away? Or would you rather have her know how to go up and handle that gun, unload it, and put it in a safe spot so that nobody got hurt? And I think that right there kind of like, oh, yeah, I never thought about that. And the shooting sports, I think that teaches a whole heck of a lot of respect to these kids. And,
Yeah.
they got to learn to
Address
handle a gun, how it
these kids.
works. And, you know, I I just see more respect coming out of those kids than I
Yeah.
do, the
They're very disciplined. I mean, they know they don't get two strikes. I mean, if they mishandle a gun, they're out. Um, and they've got lots of what you don't know is you don't know all the rules for the team academically and dress code wise, and they're held to a standard that is probably tougher than a lot of sports, to be perfectly honest. And that's why I think these kids are building those leadership skills and discipline and confidence is because they get up there and they follow those rules and they're holding each other accountable, and then they turn around and their confidence skyrockets because they've learned something that a lot of people view as difficult, and they master that craft, and that spills over into life, guys. I mean, that really shooting sports builds the type of community leaders that I want here. You were talking about schools being involved with these teams. And here in town in Sibley, we've merged with another school, Ocheeden, and Sibley Ocheeden has a shooting generals. That's the name of the team, and those kids letter. It's a lettering sport. So you've got these kids starting in junior high that are coming up through this. By the time they get to high school, it's really something they've mastered, and they're very competitive at it. And then they get their letter, and it just gives them a sense of pride that they probably wouldn't have been able to do that in something else because they're not involved in that in a lot of cases. So it's an avenue that just gives them a skill set they can take for life, and we can be really proud of it. So
So, do you have any other projects that are kind of in the works? Any other things that you're going to be doing there with the foundation?
yeah, so kind of paralleling with our marketing efforts, which the foundation, even though we're working with a huge number of coaches and kids and boosters and parents, there's still a lot of people that don't know about us. And you alluded to that there at home. And so we've started looking at other avenues that we can use to kind of get our name out there and educate a new group to what we do. So we've started hosting some special events, and they're all over the board. They're done that way intentionally so that we're talking to new people. We're doing some We did a concert a few weeks ago in Indiana or Ohio. It was Ohio. I'm sorry. We did some sporting clay shoots. This coming a week from this Saturday, we're going to be doing an air rifle training in Fort Wayne, Indiana, with some Olympians. They're going to work with kids and coaches at a place called the X Count. And then we're doing a donor cultivation event that night. We're bringing in people that want to learn more about who we are. But every event that we're hosting, the goal there is obviously to engage people with shooting sports, but the bigger picture is to kind of teach them about what we're doing and what a great opportunity and time it is to get involved, because matching money for an investment. I wish my 401k matched me dollar for dollar.
Yeah.
Telling you what,
Yeah.
that would be a good gig.
Yeah.
And in most cases, the last summer months here, we've been over $1 to $1. I think last month we were $1.53 to $1. So for every buck that a team is putting in their endowment, we're putting in $1.53 in the month of July, kind of a thing. So their endowments grow quickly, and we have endowments with $200 in them, and we have endowments with a couple of million in them. And you can imagine, if you've got a couple $1,000,000 in an endowment account, that team isn't going to worry about funding for a long time. So we let them set the parameters, how much they want to raise, but that's kind of up to the team. But our outreach is kind of shifting. We're trying to get to those new people, and that's why we're doing the events, why we did a concert. What does the foundation have to do with a concert? Well, we're trying to reach a new crowd, a new demographic, a new group. And it happened to be at Camp Atterbury during a national rifle shoot, but a lot of the people there were not athletes. They were boosters and friends and didn't know the first thing about us. So those are good things to get out there and get involved in.
So if just a few of those people take that
Yeah,
information back to their high schools and
that's
in
what
their
we need.
communities, and you planted those seeds that
Absolutely.
may grow
And
from there.
we're also providing coach training grants. We know there's a shortage of coaches. Coaches turn over about every 4 years because they kind of come up through the system with their kids and they coach a team for a while. And then when their kid graduates, maybe I'll stop coaching now, and they pass the torch to the next coach. So we want to make sure there's plenty of coaches and they have the credentials and the training they need to be effective on the range. And then another thing that we're offering now is range grants. We realize there's not enough places to shoot in the country, and if there is a place that's in need of maybe updating or repairs or another trap field or another bunker or something, we provide grants to people that are looking to expand their facilities. So that has been a huge hit. I think last year we did 750,000 on that program, and I think this year we're going to do close to $1 million, because we're getting 4 times that in requests. So we realize we got to keep moving that number up to keep up with the demand. But we feel it's part of our duty to make sure these places are up to snuff and they're safe and these kids have an opportunity. So that's what we're doing.
How did I know our local team did have a little bit of struggles? They're getting started, they're getting rolling, they're getting some kids shooting, but just talking with them, a friend of mine does own a trap range as well. How hard was the ammo shortage and everything on these teams in the last couple of years? Ammo went up, so it was kind of some of it. I believe is kind of the highest bidder. Who could get it
So
paid for, and
we're blessed to have excellent relationships with a number of industry leaders. 2 of those companies, Remington Ammo and Federal Premium Ammo, are sponsors of ours. They provide ammo buying programs specifically for youth. So youth teams have access to that ammo purchasing program twice a year, and in most cases, you could get what you needed through that program, and it's discounted. For youth, it's pretty heavily discounted, to be honest. So I heard a few teams that were maybe they procrastinated a little bit and they didn't place the orders for their ammo, and they got into a corner, and then they couldn't shoot, or they were struggling to get enough ammo for these kids to shoot. Because in most programs, they're shooting flats a week, not a flat a month. They're shooting a lot of ammo. And even our local squad here offered to our neighboring county, if they needed ammo, we had enough to sell them some. And keep them going. It's kind of a family. As much as you think it's about competition, it's not at all. These kids cheer each other on, and they support the neighboring teams. And when they go to national events and compete, they're all hanging out together at a crawfish boil afterwards. They're all having a good time. It's different than other sports where you don't want to talk to the competition. They embrace it, and again, that's what makes them just exceptional leaders. They set the bar as far as I'm concerned. But ammo, I think the shortage is it's unfortunate because it drove prices, but it probably drove some of the ammo to be where it needed to be. A $550 box of trap loads, the profit margin on that was so low that it was the last priority for the ammo manufacturers to make it. Why would we not make hunting rounds and rifle loads when we're making a good profit on that versus trap loads are the cheapest stuff we make, and we make a couple of cents in a box and we move on. So that shortage has done a number of things. It's drove people to plan ahead and appreciate when they do have it, and it's also put prices probably where they needed to kind of get to make money at it. And I want them to make money, because if they're not making money on youth shooting sports, it's not a priority for the manufacturers. I hate to say it that way, but that's part of it. That's a piece of it. So I want them to be thriving as a company, because they're going to be more apt to support all those great causes out there that you and I have in our heart. They have it in their heart too, but business in some cases is business. So.
No, you're 100% right, because in all reality, the kids aren't the ones spending the money. When they're younger, it's the
Right.
parents, and
Right.
a lot of kids, really don't have that opportunity to. Some mom and dad's like, yeah, I'm not. You can
Yeah,
for football, I'll buy you a new pair of cleats, but by
that's
God,
it.
if I'm going to spend $3,000-4,000 a year on shotgun shells and a gun for you, and
Yeah,
travel and entry fees, and
it just shows you how important the foundation is, because we provide the funding to cover a lot of that. If a team is willing to put in some sweat equity and do some fundraising, we can easily help fund their program for the year. But we're not going to hand it to them. They've got to have some skin in the game, and they've got to go out and earn it. And we're about teaching these youth life skills. We're trying to make productive citizens out of them. They got to have some discipline involved and hard work, and that makes them better in the workforce. So there's a lot to it, but we don't want to turn away anybody either. There are those kids whose parents can't afford it, and if they've got a strong endowment and they're pulling out funding, instead of the parents paying $800 a year, maybe now they're paying $100. That makes it a lot more palatable. So it's good in a lot of ways beyond what is base value, if you will.
what's the best way you can explain for trap teams, schools, or anybody that's interested in getting in with the foundation, and or somebody that would want to sponsor, like a team, if they had to, if they wanted to.
Yeah. So we have 4 program managers around the country. That's their sole focus, is they are supporting youth shooting sports teams around the country in all disciplines. If there's a team out there that wants to learn more about how do I start an endowment or how do I get involved with the foundation, they can easily contact myself, and I can plug them into their program manager. We've got a map divided out, in 4 regions or whatever, but I'm happy to connect them. If there is a local sponsor that wants to work with a local team, man, I highly encourage that, and we do that here locally. And I'm happy to visit with them about what's coming out the other end of the pipe, why invest in youth shooting sports. If they feel it's a cause that is worthy, I would highly encourage them to contact me to talk about supporting the foundation in some way, whether it's through the range grant program or the mission, or donate directly to their team endowment that's local. I support a couple of different teams personally. One of them is the team here in town that I talked about earlier. And then Iowa State has a club, and I put money in the Iowa State endowment. It's just my way of supporting what's near and dear to my heart. I think those 2 teams mean something to me, and I want to make sure to support The other teams mean a lot to me as well. So what they need financial support, and I always think long-term financial support is the best way, so that when COVID hits, if it would ever hit again, you've got the funding to pay for the more expensive ammo, or you've got the funding to continue on, because there's no sport more socially distanced than shooting sports, right? They don't share a ball. They don't stand next to each other and sweat on each other and defend each other. They're spaced out in a trap field, and they're socially distanced. So shooting sports can go on, and a lot of sports can't. So I really admire that about that
What a
discipline.
better way to social distance and go out and shooting some guns.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted.
We did that when we were guiding, you know.
Yeah.
They said you can't go to the lodge, but you can be out there in the field. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that made sense.
Yep. I was
Made
fine.
all sense in the world.
So he goes, "Where have you been? Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I've been working.
I've been out in the field. Don't worry about it."
Yeah.
You know. So we're gonna have all the info for the foundation and everything on our Facebook page, our Spotify. You got all that links. We'll see if we can get some John's contact info on there. I've known John a long time, and he'll definitely put you in the right direction. And if you are listening to this, get involved in your local shooting sports, whether
Yeah.
it's just taking a kid hunting, throwing them. If they have, even if they're not a part of the foundation, throw them a couple $100. And you're going to help more than what you think. The youth movement I've been pushing, and John knows this because I called him this winter and been pushing and pushing and pushing. I think we're finally getting over that crest of that hill and getting kids outdoors. 20 years ago we had 52 kids in my youth hunt, and I think I got 12 last year. So it's slowly gotten to the point where when the bird numbers dropped in the mid 2000s, that everybody quit hunting, and now it's coming back. The kids are out shooting, even if they're not hunting, they're out shooting, and then they're wanting to hunt when they get older. So that's big. So support your local trap teams, your youth, anything you can do, because it's like John says, it makes them a better human being. If I didn't have that opportunity when I was a kid, just like you, Wade, we wouldn't be sitting here. And
No, that's true.
and John the same way.
Yeah.
One of the things I thought about, and I was going to ask you when we got to go in there, but breaking down the male female kind of numbers do you have any kind of real grasp of that, John? I mean, obviously, there's
Yeah.
a lot of ladies that are shooting on these trap teams for these high schools, and that's kind of another cool part of it, right? Is that
Totally.
the
Yeah.
competition is not only with you can as you put it, you don't have to be fast, you don't have to be tall, you don't have to be strong particularly, but in that particular case in that sport, you can be of a different sex even and
Right.
compete. So
Well,
what's the numbers of that, at least in Iowa, that you're seeing?
the girls, ironically, are they typically take instruction a little bit better. They don't have a lot of preconceived habits from growing up and shooting a little bit more. A lot of the guys start earlier, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're learning the right way. And a girl will take coaching very well. So it's kind of cool when they're in high school. You see these girls take off, and they're smashing targets right out of the chute. You're like, wow. And part of it is they just listen to coach and understand and translate it to the field, and they're man, you see them start to crush clays, and they're excited. They get popped. They really want to share it with the world. But it's about 3/4 to a quarter. It's girls shooting sports are growing a lot, a lot. But it's still male dominated, but not as much as you think. There are some other groups out there that are doing a lot strictly for just girls, and I think that's growing the popularity because they're becoming more of a leader and a mentor in that space. And so more girls who would maybe be timid and not want to explore the sport are doing it because they're seeing all these other girls doing it. And girls, man, you were talking about great teammates. They just excel, in shotgun sports. One of the girls I work with the most at the foundation, she grew up in Nebraska. She got involved in 4-H shooting sports when she was incredibly young, got really good at it, went to Kentucky, shot on the team along with another girl I work with. They both went to Kentucky, shot on the same air rifle team. Now I'm talking air rifles. And one of them made it actually to the first alternate of the Olympic Games for that discipline. So all from a real rural upbringing in 4-H, backyard shooting paper targets. And you would never think that that would lead to a scholarship for an education at University of Kentucky. And now they're both working in the industry and they can talk the talk because they've lived it. They're just a byproduct of shooting sports. And that's what we missed, that generation. You guys were talking about that earlier. We missed a generation. We did miss a generation. And these two young ladies are professional, excellent leaders, big thinkers. They're making an impact on teams all across the country every day. So I'm humbled to work with somebody like that, because as much as I love shooting and I came up with it, it's nothing compared to their achievements. I didn't shoot at college competitively. I went hunting every chance I could, but I wish I would have had an opportunity to be on a team during my college years, because it would have kept me out of a lot of trouble. Would have made for a better education. Let's put it that way.
So here comes the part when we get close to the end of the podcast, and it's all the fun and the emotional part, kind of. But we got to have your favorite dog and hunting story, and I bet
Yeah.
I know who it's going to involve. But
Well,
we'd love to hear them.
Yeah. So with Jake, it's kind of a sad story. It's one of those learning moments for me. There was two things that happened on a hunt, and one of them was really my fault. But we were cutting across a snow-covered bean field. There's no habitat. It's just snow-covered, flat white, northwest Iowa, a little bit windy. And I'd been out too long. I took a week off, and I was hunting in this really cold, brutal weather. And it was with Jake. And we're out in the middle of a bean field cutting across to the truck, and he goes on point. Now, my gun is broken open. There's not a stitch of grass anywhere that I can see. It's a bean field, right? And I holler at him. I walk by and I holler at him, let's go, let's go. I thought he was pointing a mouse or something dumb, and finally he doesn't break point. So I go back there and he's pointing yet, and I kick the snow out of frustration, and a rooster boiled out of it. And there was no sign of any birds anywhere. It was one of those long walks that you're just like, dang it. And again, that would have been in that year time frame where, the hunting wasn't the greatest. And after that, I just quickly learned, trust the dog. Quit guessing, quit thinking you know more than that dog. That dog is so evolutionary superior to you at hunting. You need to shut up and just do what the dog tells you to do, right? So I get home after this embarrassment of a hunt, and I was coughing and kind of hacking over the next few days. And Jake would never sit up on my lap. He just was on the floor. He's a house dog, and all at once he wanted to be up on my lap, and he would sniff my breath all the time. And I kept kicking him away, kind of like, and I didn't learn, right? And finally I got to the point where I was hacking so bad, my wife said, you need to go to the doctor. Here I had pneumonia. I'd been out and got pneumonia and all this hunting and stuff, and the dog knew it days before I did. He was smelling my breath because it wasn't right. There was a problem. Then he'd lay his head on my chest. It's like, oh my God, how much more evidence do you need to pay attention to your dog, right? So it wasn't a great successful hunt, obviously, but it was one of my best moments and memories of Jake. But hunting, the last big hunt that Jake did before he passed was the governor's hunt in Denison, Iowa. And I was asked to take Governor Branstad's son, Marcus, on a hunt with Casey Buck, who KR Buck was a huge volunteer in that community, and a lot of people know KR to this day. And Casey and I took the governor's son on a hunt, and Jake pointed 3 birds within 20 minutes, and Marcus shot all three, and we were headed back to the truck before 10 o'clock, kind of a deal. It was just awesome. That's just what you want your dog to do, is perform well in front of others, and that was, the crown on his head there right before because he passed about a month later, so it was pretty cool to have that memory. But Cooper, I've done a couple of different hunts with him that have been extraordinary. He was trained over at Green Acre Sportsman Club in Illinois, and I got to go out and watch the training procedure over there. He was there for months, and I hated being separated from him, but he was a great trainer, and I wanted Dan Erke to train my dog, and so got the chance to go over there and watch him work, and then I brought him home, and the first hunt I had him out was, one of those magical moments in the field where he's just crossing and holding great points, and it just made you look like you're a rock star hunter, even though I'm not. And I'll never forget that that feeling of having a really well trained dog that clearly knows what he's doing better than I did, and walking out of the field with a limit of birds and not breaking a sweat, kind of a thing. So a couple of moments like that where I'm just proud of the dogs more than anything. I'm not proud of myself at all, but yeah. This dog, I mentioned to you that he likes hunting dove, and he's just a good bucket partner. He'll sit there by your bucket and share a snack and tell you stories while you're sitting there, and I shot a dove, and he went out there and he came back, and he didn't have the bird, I'm like, what the heck? And I cast him back out there, and he went back out and he came back, and I'm like, bird down, get back. So I sent him again, he comes back, and this whole time I'm like, why is he not finding this bird? He's out there. He comes back, and I see a tiny bit of the feather sticking out of his mouth. He had the bird the whole time. I just never told him to drop it. So, my God, you gotta be kidding me. So he's probably thinking of all the owners in the world. I'm stuck with you.
This guy.
Oh. So that was
you needed. That's one that you needed on video. That one.
Yeah, those those stories, we all relate to them. My best friend had a mutt, and he was big. He was a lab golden retriever. The mother was a 3-legged golden retriever, and a lab. And he liked to go hunting, and if he got the chance, he could flush birds. You had to crawl up on top of the dog tailgate and get on the dog box, and then you'd go in. He wouldn't. Yeah. He didn't like riding in that dog box, but if you got up on top of the dog box, Cody'd get up there, and Cody's a big boy too, and he'd get in there. Well, we were hunting on a crappy day, and lots of birds, and I seen Harley. He kept going over and messing on this huge snowdrift, and I go, "What is he doing?" I don't know. I bet he's got a bird. I said, "There's no way there's a bird in that snowdrift."
Exactly. Right.
And out he come with it, and it had snowed the night before. And that bird was still in there, and he smelled that, and it was late afternoon, the day after the snowstorm, and he dug in there and pulled that rooster out. And that was 20-some years ago, and we still tell that story when we drive by that place. Hey, remember that time?
Yeah.
We just kept walking, and pretty soon here he come with this normal formal training. Just, he liked his tennis ball in the yard and go hunting with us, but no, those stories, you just trust the dog. So we appreciate you joining us tonight, John. And I know you're a busy man, and one thing I say is, what is your prediction of the game this weekend?
Well, of course the Cyclones going to win. I would put it up 14. So yeah, I don't know, man. Every time I talk about the Hawks and the Cyclones, I get nervous because you go into Kinnick, and that's not a good place to be a competitor. You're going to get educated in that stadium. So it's hard for me to say, but my nephew played there for a few years, or 5 years actually. And so there was a couple of years where I kept my mouth shut and didn't cheer for the Cyclones, but now he's out of school and I can cheer as loud as I want. So yeah.
What's your score prediction?
What's my prediction?
Yes.
Score 21-7. Better.
Hopefully it's not 7-3 again. And
I hope it's not all safeties. That's all I can say.
Well, thanks a lot, John. We appreciate the time, and hopefully through the podcast and our people that'll be watching this, we can get the word out a little more, and
Yeah.
Getting some people to come back to you guys and get some more information. Let's get some more kids out there on those ranges.
That sounds great. I love it. Thanks, guys.
I
All right.
appreciate it. So I'm ready to start hunting. We're gonna have we got some good hunts planned. We got a heroes hunt coming up.
Yeah, we do.
We got some great guests coming up. We're gonna have a biologist in the DNR of Iowa. He's gonna talk about the recent pheasant survey in the state. And
yeah, and one of the things too to remember for everybody that's listening out there is, take time, subscribe to the channel. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, but some subjects maybe that you'd like to hear us talk about on the podcast in the future. But yeah, we're trying to build the numbers, and we want to keep doing this,
Yeah.
and try to get out there and help us do that if you will. We really appreciate it.
feel free to shoot our Facebook page a message, and we'll get you an answer in return, and like always, keep their nose in the wind.
We'll see you next time.